So I think that all entrepreneurs have some things in common.
Focus on one course until successful.
Part of what we do for our clients is help them implement systems and processes to manage things like cash flow.
So I think an entrepreneur is someone who's just self-driven, who's just accountable, because then as you start to grow, you start being like, okay, I'm the leader now. My company has to grow.
Backwards saying, oh, geez, we should have done this or we could have done that. Instead, you're looking forward and saying, this is what we're likely to experience. What happens if we make this change over here? Or what happens if we dial up our advertising spend? Or what happens if we hire more people?
You want to succeed. Only difference between someone who's good and great is you got to want it as bad as you want to breathe.
One of the challenging parts of my business is that I'm dealing with all different kinds of entrepreneurs. Some of them are multimillionaires, but they don't know their way around the financial statements at all.
And then you realize the other mistake too is time.
Oftentimes, the finance leg, the finance and accounting leg is weak because most small and medium-sized companies don't have a CFO. To some people, businesses work. And to me, business isn't really work. It's just kind of a way of life. It's fun.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Rise Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Hanny Mehari. I'm the CEO and founder of Hanny Mobile. In this podcast, we interview business owners and entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things. We want to be able to share so we can help you out. So today, I have a special guest. I have Ryan Chenier. Ryan is the CEO and founder of Mastery CFO. He's helping small and medium businesses on the bottom and top line grow. So thanks for being on the show, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Hanny. Good to be here.
Yeah, let's do it. So Ryan, I was looking at where you first started a couple of years ago. You actually started in the corporate world. And then like 5-6 years ago, you decided to go in and help small businesses. What made you decide to do that with being a CFO?
Well, when I was in the corporate world, I really enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed working with large companies. I enjoyed the travel. I was traveling across Canada all of the time. But there was pressure to move to either Toronto or Calgary. We had a head office in Toronto and a regional head office in Calgary. And living in Winnipeg, I've got roots here. I've got family here. I've got friends here. And so does my wife. And so I decided at the very end of things, they said, look, Ryan, either you move to Toronto or Calgary, or we're going to give you a severance package. And I decided to take the severance package. It was my opportunity to start my own business. It's something I had wanted to do for some time. And so I did it. I went all in and I haven't looked back since.
Nice, man. You make that jump and you're like, let's do it.
It was great.
Yeah. And before that, what were you doing like when you say in the corporate world?
So I had many different roles over the years, working with a variety of different people doing different things, but there was always a focus on the finances. When I was at Canada Cartage, I was 14 years at Canada Cartage before I opened my own business. And at Canada Cartage, my focus was to work with clients. So I was a senior director of business development for accounts across Canada. And I'd be working with the CEOs or CFOs of other companies and working with them on what our company could do for their business. So we were a logistics company and we'd look after specific components of the supply chain. And what I would do is work with our accounting team, our pricing team to figure out how we could create a solution for our clients like Loblaw, Sobeys, there was a variety of them. But their logistics spend in Canada, depending on which region of Canada, could be tens of millions of dollars. We would be able to provide them with infrastructure and resources like trucks and drivers and warehouses, operational centers where we could, park the cars and things like that, park the vehicles and things like that. And by virtue of being able to have them piggyback on our resources, we could reduce their overall transportation spend or their overall logistics spend. And that was significant because even if you reduce the cost of transportation by a few percentage points, if you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, that's a massive bottom line difference. So I was collaborating and I was effectively the go-between between my company and their company. And we would almost all of our business cases that I would be putting together, I'd be putting together on spreadsheets and had to have a really good understanding of their finances and my company's position with respect to pricing. And so there was a component of business development there. There was a component of finances there. And there was a component of operations because it's an operations heavy business. You have to understand the trucks and you have to understand the different ways of the supply chain and different things you could do to make a difference to transportation spend or overall logistics spend. So there was a lot to it. I really enjoyed it. But when I decided to go into business for myself, I had to choose something that I thought was going to be particularly valuable to prospective clients. And my understanding of small and medium-sized businesses is that most companies have a bookkeeper. Most companies have a tax accountant. but they don't have a CFO. A CFO is a chief financial officer. In large companies, a CFO is providing executive level leadership, management, direction. They're on the executive team, so they're collaborating with the other executives in the company, aligning the different functions of the business together and making sure that the company is financially successful. Small and medium-sized businesses can't afford a full-time on-staff CFO. It's too expensive. $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year would be the price tag. But by virtue of being able to use somebody like me and my team and I now, there's more than just me, but by virtue of being able to use a fractional CFO, you can get that executive level leadership, the oversight of your accounting function, and you can get the results that a CFO is providing for a large company, but you can get it for a small company. And so that means looking at things like cash flow, looking at things like net profit, looking at margins across the board, unit economics, all different components of the financial part of a small and medium-sized business as it aligns with the other parts of the business. So there's a marketing component to every business. There's an operations component to every business. So having the experience of working in the corporate world, working with large companies, it was a natural for me to be able to sit down with smaller businesses and be able to provide a perspective that they couldn't otherwise get and make an immediate impact. And so I've very much enjoyed that. And more now I'm working with larger and larger businesses. And it's a comfort zone for me, so I don't have a problem with that. But we work with some startups as well. It depends on the situation. But that's pretty much the story, Hanny.
No, I really like it, man, how you started off helping Sobeys, these big corporations, and looking at their numbers. But Ryan, like, I'm guessing becoming a CFO, did you have to like learn something? I know you got your MBA in that.
Mm-hmm.
I also seen that when you were a kid, you're an entrepreneur as well too.
Yeah.
So a small little things that you kind of been doing, because your expertise is definitely there. But I always look back at every CEO, every entrepreneur. I don't know if you heard of the Warren Buffett story, where Warren Buffett, when he was, I believe, 10, 11 years old, he used to buy candy and newspaper, and he used to sell them when he was a kid. So tell me a little bit about what you see in entrepreneurs, essentially, who are starting these businesses that are CEOs. What are some of the talents that you see when they're building out in that infrastructure phase?
So what are the talents to entrepreneurs who are in a CEO position?
Yeah.
CEO position? Yeah. So I think that all entrepreneurs have some things in common. And part of what I see there is drive. It's the desire to do something, to generate a betterment of your position, and possibly to generate better positions for other people in your circle. Entrepreneurs are not content to sit back and just kind of go with the flow. They're looking to make things happen. And in the world of business, there's an endless amount of different things that you can potentially do. And so entrepreneurs can get addicted to that, that going out there and providing some value in some way, whether it be a product or a service, being able to generate some income, to be able to manage that, decide what you're going to do with it. You can invest it, you can spend it, you can have fun with it, you can hire other people. It's a very creative kind of a role to be an entrepreneur. In the years that I've been alive, I've met lots and lots of people, and there's only a small percentage of them that want to be entrepreneurs. And I can really relate to those people. It's difficult to say exactly what the common traits are. I mean, there's all sorts of different entrepreneurs out there, for sure. But I would say that that's a big part of it. Creativity and a desire to go out there and better yourself, better other people. It's I would call it almost like an exploratory type of a preference. You want to go and explore and find out what's out there and make the world a better place. That's probably not the case for every entrepreneur, but I see that in many entrepreneurs. What's your opinion, Hanny? I mean, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You speak with a lot of entrepreneurs.
I think the creativity part of it is like they all just started with nothing, and then essentially they were able to grow their business, because nobody has a lot. They start with low, and then eventually you get the capital, you get the people, the investors. So I think for me, it's like most entrepreneurs they don't have, like, how people tell you a lot of them are self-made. I think self-made word it's a lie. A lot of them actually started with nothing, and then they were able to sort of build that way. So I think an entrepreneur is someone who's just self-driven, who's just accountable. Because then as you start to grow, you start being like, okay, I'm the leader now. My company has to grow. And the only way it's going to grow is by me showing up every single day. So I think it's more about, also to Napoleon Hill talks about having a burning desire. Like if you want to succeed, only difference between someone who's good and great is you got to want it as bad as you want to breathe, essentially, right? Because if you don't want it, then you could just wake up and tomorrow you might just stop, or you could just be 5 years in and be like, oh, I'm good now, but no, you got to keep going. So that's kind of my take on being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. It's motivation, right? It's that
Yeah.
desire to go and do stuff, and it gives you a sense of purpose, and you can channel your energy, and yeah, entrepreneurs seem to have that in common.
Yeah, it's very tough though. It's like very tough, as you said. But going back to the small and medium businesses, because that's kind of the niche that you really like want to help. And what do you see the biggest challenges when it comes to small businesses? Let's say on the cash flow side of things, what you talked about earlier. Most people, like for me, when I first started my business, I bought a product for 50, sold it for 100. I made profit. But then when I looked at my bottom line, I'm like, did I keep some of that money at the end of the year? So, because you're just doing it as a side hustle. But where do you come in that aspect?
Well, the best way to explain it is to put it in these terms. I like to put it in these terms. Every business has three fundamental pillars upon which its success rests. And those pillars are the main functions of the business. So there's finance and accounting, there's operations or production, okay, and then there's sales and marketing. Those are the three fundamental pillars. I like to describe them as like three legs on a stool, okay? And you have to have all three legs stable in order for the stool to be stable and for the success that rests upon it to be significant. Now, with small and medium-sized businesses, when somebody goes into business for themselves, they're an entrepreneur. You do what you do with technology. You've got an expertise there. You've got knowledge about what it is you're going to do and how you're going to make it work, and that's the operations part. It's the stuff you do day in and day out to generate money, to have commerce going for you. Most people who get into business have something that they know how to do. A plumber, for example, knows how to plumb. An electrician knows how to wire. Right? You know your technology, your phones. So usually entrepreneurs are covered on that front. And most entrepreneurs are able to figure out the sales and marketing side of things to a point. They're able to get a few customers, and that's not easy, right? It's not, you probably don't have a lineup of clients outside your door. Most small and medium-sized businesses don't. So getting business development, call it, is a challenging part of what they do. Now, I actually looked at potentially getting involved in being like a marketing agency or an advertising agency. I thought about that, but I didn't want to do that. And I'll tell you why in a moment. So I decided to get into the finance side because most small and medium-sized businesses, yes, they've got some clients, and yes, they know how to deliver upon that product or service that they're providing, but they don't really understand the finances. It's a bit like a black box for many entrepreneurs. So getting into cash flow, challenges with cash flow can arise not so much with small businesses. I mean, if you buy a phone for $50 and you sell it for $100, you buy it for $50. You have to have that initial $50.
Yeah.
But assume you do. You sell it for $100. Now you're $50 profit. That's easy. But when you get larger and you get payroll and you get vendors that are invoicing you and they're requiring their funds relatively quickly, and you're invoicing your clients, or you're waiting for funds from a payment provider or something like that, then what happens is your profit is not the exact same as your cash flow. And the differences in timing can affect things in a big way. So, for example, a lot of entrepreneurs, as they begin to scale, they hire staff and they become challenged with making payroll. You're profitable, your business can be profitable, but payroll's due today. And that invoice you sent out yesterday, you're probably not going to collect on that until next week. So that means today you need funds. And that's a simple example, but it tends to amplify as the business grows. And so we see it all of the time. There's things that don't necessarily affect the profit and loss, or they affect the profit and loss in a way that is different from the way it affects cash flow. It's a big problem for a lot of businesses that aren't properly managing it. Now, the flip side of that is, if you manage cash flow, if you're forecasting cash flow and understanding what the timing of your inflows and outflows is going to be, then it doesn't have to be as much of a worry. It doesn't have to be as much of a problem. And that's part of what we do for our clients, is help them implement systems and processes to manage things like cash flow. Because most entrepreneurs are busy doing the operations part of the business or the sales and marketing part of the business, and they don't really have the ability, or maybe they've got the ability, but they don't have the desire or the upfront knowledge to look after the finances, nor should they. Like every business that scales, as it grows, what you want to do is bring on people, bring on partners, bring on others who can help you leverage your time and expertise. Some of our clients, we've had clients that are experienced accountants, CPAs, but they still have us do the work because they're focused somewhere else. Their highest value add tasks or capabilities that they're performing day in and day out are such that they'd rather pay us to look after their finances so that they don't have to. Yes, they understand their finances, but no, they don't want to be the ones that are doing the heavy lifting and always watching it. It's like a doctor might hire another doctor for, if that's maybe not the best example, but there are, there are examples where somebody's going to focus on the sales and marketing part of their business or on the operations part of their business. And they don't want to shift their focus to doing their own finances. They want to have somebody who can look after that for them. So when I was in the corporate world, that was a great example. A lot of CEOs would have all kinds of accounting experience. They could do what their CFOs did, but they still paid their CFOs $500,000 a year to look after that so that they didn't have to. And they could do sales and marketing too, but they'd hire like a vice president of sales and marketing to look after that so they didn't have to. But they would look after their VPs or their CFO or their COO, whatever the case might be. Because as you scale, you need to have those people who actually can do things for you so that you don't have to. And some business owners, some entrepreneurs, their goal is to get out of the business, to have people who run the business for them. And so you're always going to be needing, whatever your goals are, you're always going to be needing other people if part of your goal is to scale.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on, because I think the biggest challenge is like as you start to grow, as you start to make money. Yeah, it's $50 to go into 150. But yeah, as you start to hire people, as you contractors, the invoices are coming in, the vendors that you talked about. We work with a lot of vendors, and you realize your money is tied up essentially for a couple weeks, maybe a month.
Yeah.
So people are relying on you in that sense. But what do you think the mindset there is though for most entrepreneurs? They need someone to help them, but they're afraid because, I've done it myself. I've had this happen when I first started. I was hustling and can work, hundreds of hours, whatever it was. But it's like, it gets to a point where you have to be willing to make that, okay, I want this to grow. Do you see that a lot, especially, you do work with bigger entrepreneurs, but in businesses, what do you think the mindset there is like, hey, this person can help me and I can get there much faster?
So to understand the question, Hanny, so if an entrepreneur is at the stage where they're wanting to grow, and why would they turn to a CFO? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So very much like I was saying, the entrepreneur gets to a point where they're saying, okay, I'm managing everything. Like when you first start out, you're the CEO of your own company, but if the light bulb goes out, if the light bulb burns out, you're also the chief light bulb changer, right? Like you got to look after everything. But the company starts to grow, and you might hire a bookkeeper to record your bookkeeping, your record keeping for the business, which is a requirement of the government. You have to keep records. You may outsource to a marketing agency to help you get leads, and you may hire somebody like an executive assistant to help you manage things like your emails and things like that. You need to build that kind of a team. So by the time a company, and it depends, there's a lot of exceptions to this rule, but by the time a company is between $1 and $3 million in annual revenue, there's already generally a team there. They already have a bookkeeper. But now their situation on the finance side is more than just keeping records. It's more a matter of how are we going to manage cash? And if we're going to make investments, if we've got cash in the bank, should we just leave it there, or should we invest it in some way? And if we're going to invest it, when are we going to invest it? What is the return on investment likely to be, and when? And when we make this investment, that's going to take up cash. And so do we want to use cash that's in the bank, or do we want to get funding from the bank? In other words, borrow money? There's all sorts of different options. But if you're going to grow your company, you need to begin plotting out in advance your financial statements, not what they were, like not what they are based on what your bookkeeper's doing, but you need to look forward and say, okay, we're getting close to the end of 2025. In 2026, what's our budget going to look like? How many sales do we expect to have? What's our revenue going to be like all year long, month by month by month by month? And some companies are at the point where they've got a wish list. Other companies have it dialed in, and they know what their return on advertising spend is going to be. And they know if they invest this much in advertising, they're going to have X number of dollars of sales. And they know that they're going to have to hire somebody when they hit a certain amount of sales. It's going to trigger the requirement for more staff. Being able to plot that out on the revenue side, being able to understand your forecast on the revenue side, it's critical. Super important. We can help a company put that together. Then you need to understand what your gross profit margin is. What are your direct expenses? When you sell something, what's the cost of that sale? If you're selling Coffee cups, for example, every coffee cup you sell, maybe you get $1 from the coffee cup, but there's a cost of 50 cents for when you buy the product from a wholesaler. You have to pay that cost of goods sold. Anything that's left over has to cover your overhead. And once your overhead's covered, then you're left with profit. Overhead expenses, staff, insurance, rent, there's all sorts of advertising expenses. There's all sorts of them, but you can literally put together a financial statement, a profit and loss statement, and you can put together a balance sheet, which is another financial statement, and you can put together a statement of cash flows, which is the third main financial statement in advance. So it's a future-looking statement, but that will help you provide guardrails. You'll understand, when are we expecting to spend the cash? When are we going to need the cash? If we need to go to the bank, when is that going to be? Or if we have too much cash in the bank, what are we going to do with it? You can start to look at that in advance. So you're not looking backwards saying, oh, geez, we should have done this or we could have done that. Instead, you're looking forward and saying, this is what we're likely to experience. What happens if we make this change over here? Or what happens if we dial up our advertising spend? Or what happens if we hire more people? Or there's all sorts of possibilities. You can start to examine what the levers are for profitability. What are the levers for cash in the bank? What are the levers for all sorts of different things, business value, different things that can help us get to the next level, to help us achieve our vision of success? If you plot it out in a forecast on profit and loss and the balance sheet and the statement of cash flows, it gives you an excellent idea of what your financial statements are going to need to look like in order for you to achieve your goal. So you're taking your goal, you're translating it into numbers, and that becomes your target. And then as you progress towards your target, so if we're building a budget for 2026 and it's January 2026, February 2026, March 2026, we can look back and say, did we hit our plan? If our plan is to hit X number of dollars in profit, did we achieve that? And if so, great. If not, why not? And what went wrong? Did we not hit our sales target? Was our budget off for some reason? Or is the cost of coffee cups more than we expected? Do we need to adjust our pricing? But you start to dial in on a dimension of decision making that you wouldn't otherwise have available to you if you don't go through this discipline. And I'm not suggesting that entrepreneurs start to build out like what we call these pro forma financial statements or forecasts. I'm not suggesting that like an entrepreneur sits down and tries to put this all on spreadsheets, but that's why they work with us, because we're good at it. We've got software that we're very proficient in that helps make this easier. There's a team, so I bring to the table my background, my experience, my expertise, but I've got a team with me as well. So I can leverage my team for my different clients. And so in a relatively effective way, an efficient way, we can make all of that easy for an entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur will be in a situation where they can say, okay, I think we want to try out this advertising initiative, or I think we want to take some of the cash that we made this year and invest it in this way. What's the impact going to be on our financial statements? Well, we can adjust that and tell them it's math, and it's not rocket science math. It's kind of simple math, but there's lots of it. You have to understand all of these financial components of business and how they interrelate with one another. But when we do that, I can sit down, and I often do. Yesterday, I was in an all-day meeting with one of my clients. They're running the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it was a quarterly meeting. And in that meeting, we were looking at different decisions that they've made, and they were trying to understand, did they hit the targets that they wanted to hit? That was my responsibility, to bring that to the table, help them understand. And then we were planning for the next quarter. And some of the decisions we were making were fundamental decisions where the CEO was deciding to shift his focus in the business to different components of the business based on our discussions. They used to have quarterly meetings, don't get me wrong, but their decision-making was a little bit more two-dimensional. They weren't sure what was going to happen financially. They had gut instinct, they had a sense of what might happen, but we take that sense and we translate it into more specific numbers. It gives them the ability to operationalize the plan, or turn it into actionable steps to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. I know I'm saying an awful lot. Yeah, it can be complicated, but part of what I try to do with entrepreneurs is to simplify it so that they don't have to understand it. I want to translate it to them. Yeah. One of the challenging parts of my business is that I'm dealing with all different kinds of entrepreneurs. Some of them are multimillionaires, but they don't know their way around the financial statements at all. So I have to go really slow and explain things in detail. And eventually they come to know. That's part of my job, is to teach them. Other entrepreneurs, as I say, they are accountants, and so they totally get it. And so I speak to them differently too. And so there's a lot there, but I love it, Hanny. I never get tired of talking about it.
Yeah. So no, Ryan, I really like what you're sharing, man. It's a great reminder of like long-term vision, looking at the bottom line, looking at the top line as well too. But you're right, most small businesses, you're thinking about 2026. They're only thinking about 2025. So, right. So, but for me, like, it goes back to when I first started my business. I literally started with $365. And how I started that business was I just hustled a lot. I outworked everybody else in the market. I would go out there telling people, this is my product. Do you want to buy it? In the beginning, a lot of people were saying no. But the other side of the business, like looking at COGS, looking at your profit and loss, right? EBITDA, these are things that I had to learn by reading books, by studying someone else, by Warren Buffett, the Ray Dalios of the world, looking at what they done when it came to investing into companies. Because these are things you don't just learn by getting into the business. Yeah, you can, but you have to be looking at someone else that had the experience to see how you can sort of put that into your word. But what do you think? Let's say, because I always go back to the small, medium businesses, like one of the biggest challenges, like they don't have enough guidance, enough mentorship. So essentially what happens is that one person can be telling you focus on the sales and marketing, but then another person could be telling you focus on the systems. And I think for me, I realized I just dialed in on the sales side of it. Like, how do I just focus on sales slowly? Because all you really have when you're first starting was small capital. You got to be able to, like I said, get your $50 turned into, let's say, $1,000, right? And so once you make that $1,000, now how can you do more? But essentially, if you had to give an advice to someone who's just starting, let's say they're starting with $10,000 right now, what would be your advice to them? Like, would you get straight into learning the sales and marketing? Because nowadays, social media is one of the biggest things. Most people will probably go hire a social media expert, but what they forget is, though, the CFO part. Because I had no idea what it was until I actually met you, Ryan, by the way. Yes, yeah. So what do you think most people lack in that aspect? Let's say if they're starting with $10,000 or $20,000, what would you do with that capital when you're first starting as a CFO? What you know now with all your experiences over the years?
So this would be my advice to an entrepreneur with money wanting to start a business. Don't hire a CFO, and keep all of your records. I wouldn't even hire a bookkeeper in the very beginning, but figure out what it is you're good at. Figure out what your unique ability is or what you really enjoy, and figure out how you can monetize that. You have to be able to produce something, whether it be a product or a service that somebody's willing to pay for. Once you know what that is, then you can take that money and decide what you want to do to achieve your plans. You do have to think forward. I think it helps for an entrepreneur to think ahead and say, okay, I've got X number of dollars, but assuming that you're not worried about a roof over your head and food in your mouth, if it was that $10,000 is for investing in business, you have a lot of options, and a lot of it depends on your strengths. I do believe if I was going to do my business over again, I would spend more money in the beginning working with advertising professionals. I spent a lot of time just kind of having and egging it, and I developed a decent business, and a lot of entrepreneurs can. But all of the large companies that I work with, and when I say large now in the context of a fractional CFO business, they're maybe 8-figure businesses. They're not multi-million-dollar businesses like in the corporate world when I used to work in the corporate world. But when I work with my larger clients now, every one of them that's a larger business like that, they all spend tens of thousands of dollars in advertising. There's absolutely no question about that. And so if you're a small business wanting to become a big business, understand that you're going to have to get there. Either you're going to have to learn how to do it yourself and get really good at it, or you're going to have to invest in somebody else to help you get good at it. And you know what? I would say this. If you're looking at the sales and marketing side of the business, and that's one of the most important things in the beginning, if you have only $10,000, because you need clients, is once the money starts coming in, then you can start worrying about how much you've got in cash flow. But if there's no cash flow worries, But in the beginning, sales and marketing, it's a huge thing, right? If you've got people you can talk to, that's the sales component of sales and marketing. Go talk to them. When you run out of those people, you're going to need new people, right? You're going to have to find people who are interested in your business. And there's many different ways to get people interested in your business and aware of your business. There's networking, there's direct messaging, there's cold calling, there's digital advertising, there's social media, there's all kinds of different things that you can do, but there's so much of it. Like, if you think of it as the universe of marketing, bringing attention towards your product or service, it's pretty grand, and you can't be good at all of it. So pick something that you want to do that you're good at, lean into it, and then think about leveraging somebody else's skill. If you can, you have to, is your $10,000 going to be enough? You have to decide how you're going to manage that. It's not easy. Like, Hanny, you know what? I give credit to anybody who's got $10,000 and a dream who goes into business for themselves, because it would be easier to go get a job. Like if you're expecting the easy way out, don't do it. Like cease and desist. But if you've got that drive and you've got that vision and it excites you, then yeah, try your best. But every day the advice you need might be different. You know what? It's you've lived the life. It can be very tough, but it can be so rewarding. And so I encourage people like that, but there's no easy answer. Like, think about what you're going to do with the money. You need sales. You need to deliver upon those sales. And as you grow, the finance side does become more complicated, and you probably don't want to become a finance expert. You need a finance expert who can help you so that you've got everything that you need to be financially successful. That's what a fractional CFO does.
No, I think you're right on the ball. I think that the biggest thing is too, like, I think in today's world, attention is the new currency, and most people don't really know it. But I think I actually flip it. You actually need to become, you actually need to become a better marketer than you are a salesman. Because before you actually start doing sales, if you're not good, if you don't have the creativity side of it, it's going to be very tough for you to become like a type of person people actually like and have influence. Because if you're a marketer, you know how to talk to people, right? You can grab attention. Now selling becomes very easy. So that's one thing that I had to realize: how do we promote our product or service to put it out there? But then you realize as you start to do that, you start building relationship, because people don't buy a product, they buy trust, right? And then as you start building relationship, then you start meeting people, business owners and stuff. You get to meet them one-on-one. Then that relationship starts to become even more, because you can't just post 1 or 2, 3 times. It has to be consistent. That's one thing about social media. You can see someone, and they say a lot of people want to do fake it and make it, but it's like, if someone has the documentation of the process, what they've been doing, let's say someone been documenting this process for the last 5 years, you know that person has been in business for that many years and he's consistent. Where most people, they get in, they want to do marketing or they start a business by, let's say, a year or 2 years, they get excited. At year 3, they're out because they feel like, oh, this is not what it is. So if you find your passion and you actually document it, then it becomes more like rewarding, because then you're not really, I mean, you could be making money, but as long as you're showing the behind the scenes and you're being honest, people gravitate towards it. That's why I feel like social media is so powerful. Yeah. But Ryan, to go back to your point, nowadays, so let's say a company is growing, right? And they're going from 50K to now 100K, right? As you start to kind of grow, where do you find that next piece is in their business? Like, because you talked about the small little details, like when you make 50, you go to from 100, like hiring those contractors, the vendors. So what do you think that the details in that is missing? Like, do they have to have a whole team? How would you structure it when it comes to like finding someone that could do sales for you, someone that could do the marketing for you? And then what would you say the fine line in that is? Because as you said, for you to hire you is like 300K and that kind of, but as they start to grow, what do you think what kind of team should they be structuring around them in that aspect?
On all fronts, like finance as well as sales, marketing, and operations. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, if you're a solopreneur, if you're between $0 and $100,000 a year, most of those types of businesses, and there's exceptions. Again, I said it before, but it's true. There's all kinds of exceptions. But in general, if you're up to $100,000 a year, you're pretty much on your own. You can do a lot of things on your own, and that's how a lot of those kinds of businesses will manage things. But then you get over $100,000 a year, and you start looking at, well, I need to hire somebody. I've got too much business, or I can't manage my bookkeeping, or I need to leverage myself with an advertising agency, or I need an executive assistant. And those are all reasonable solutions. I would say that even before you get to be $100,000 a year, that you should have a bookkeeper. You don't need a full-time on-staff bookkeeper, but you can outsource that to a bookkeeping company, and they can look after your books for you. It is important to at least keep good financial statements. And you know what, guys, it's important to pay your taxes, in case you didn't know. And you need to have good bookkeeping to be able to pay your taxes at the end of the year. Bookkeeping is important, but that doesn't cost a lot, and that doesn't have to be full-time. If your business is such that you're spending a lot of time managing emails and all kinds of things like that, an executive assistant might be the next hire. A plumbing company, a guy who goes out and he's a plumber or she's a plumber, that person may not need an executive assistant. They may need some sort of like another assistant who's out there plumbing with them, so they can hire a body who helps them look after the operation that way. But your first hire is a significant hire because you go from, hey, $100,000 of revenue, most of it's profit, I'm doing okay, to suddenly I'm paying somebody, 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 a year. That takes up a lot of your profit. So you take a bit of a step back. And so that's a big hurdle for a lot of businesses in around that $100,000 mark. Has that been your experience?
To be honest with you, Ryan, I'm on the digital side of it. And funny enough, the other day, I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you heard Alex Hormozy.
Oh, yeah.
He runs school.com. And I seen this one dude on School who just won the School games. School, essentially, it's a community platform. And he's making $300,000 in a month. And this guy has 90% profit. Essentially, he has no team.
Okay.
So he's doing it all himself. So I think the market is shifting in a sense where nowadays, everything is digital. Everything is communicated via messages, via community, by chats. So it's not like how it used to be before where you needed 10, 20, 30 team members. As you see, Microsoft, 50% layoff, Salesforce, 50% layoff. So you're seeing a lot of these companies are going into more the AI side of things where now you have automatic responses and different things like that. So the market is completely shifting and it's happening gradually every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of seeing it more and more. And I've just realized now, I think it's more about how do you build a sort of an ecosystem where people can find you and then they can buy from you. But it starts with that trust. What do you think, though, Ryan, as the market is shifting, what are you seeing with businesses nowadays, especially with technology coming in, AI being the biggest one? As a CFO, when working with your clients, what are you seeing, the things that are changing out there in the business side?
I'm seeing things. I'm seeing things shift. So I agree with you. At the same time, if you look at it statistically, like you can find examples of people making $300,000 a month and most of it being profit. But you can also find examples of people winning the lottery. That doesn't mean that's like everybody's like that or it's happening across the board. AI is going to change things more and more. And so far, it's already had an impact. I can't predict what the future is going to be. But I know that like we have a couple of different niches or areas of specialty. One of them is construction businesses. People are still using electricity. AI isn't doing their wiring for them, and they're still using toilets. AI isn't plumbing those for them, and they're still building homes and they're laying concrete and things like that. What's happening though is that in all of these businesses, people are starting to use AI differently. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. Okay, I remember when the internet was just coming on board, wasn't that popular, and people were still opening mail and they're dealing with faxes. And at the time, they said, "Oh my gosh, like this email stuff, it's going to replace everything. We're all going to work half time. We're all going to work 4 days a week, maybe 5 hours a day, because email is going to make it so much faster, so much easier. We won't have as much work to do." But it didn't work like that. What happened is business changed, yes, but people, I think, are working harder now. It's just that the bar was raised for every business, and there's always going to be competition. And AI is going to compete against AI, but there's still going to be people competing against people as well. People wield AI at this stage. Now, at some point, maybe AI will wield people, but that's far enough off that I don't want to focus too much on that. So it's really difficult to say for sure. But I will say that as I see things change right now, I'm recognizing that more and more AI is being used to change the game, not replace the game or not replace people playing the game.
Yeah, actually, it's crazy. I had my last podcast, I had Shiraz Ali on. He's a real estate investor.
Okay.
He told me, he said, because he lives in Texas, he said most these guys, when he goes to a courtside game, for example, the CEOs and entrepreneurs that making a lot of money, they're in these trade businesses, construction and landscaping, right? So he told me these are one of the traits that are never going to go away. So he said, get your sealed and make sure you do that, do the work in that aspect of it. But do you think that for you now moving forward, as you see the market and things that kind of happen in your business, what do you find like you say your ideal client profile is construction? But do you think that I believe small and medium businesses, because if you look at corporations, the Microsoft, the Googles of the world, the small businesses are actually funding a lot of those bigger businesses, if you really think about it. As someone who's starting his dream, is essentially a corporation like Amazon has a lot of money already backed in. But in Winnipeg, essentially, when you look at the market here, what do you think one trait that you see with a lot of businesses here? I don't know if there's a lot of shops, there's a lot of grocery stores and different things like that. So what do you see a lot when it comes to Winnipeg and looking at the market, grocery stores, and do you believe in this economy, like physical locations? You know, I'm one of those right now. We're actually looking to expand, and my business has actually we've been working out of an office. When I first started, I started at my apartment. I tell people all the time, like, you don't need a store essentially, but do you see the market shifting in that aspect where you're seeing someone can have a location, but if they're not looking at their bottom line or their top line and how much capital they have, for example, we look at cash flow. Someone that has a store, I was talking to someone the other day, they have 300K in inventory, right? So how do you track that? Of course, there's a location, but if nobody's coming in, right, now you're sort of losing on the back end. And you see a lot of small businesses, they come here, some of them might have a lot of money, for example, Africa and different parts of the world, but they don't know the other side of it. Like someone like you who's a CFO they have no idea. Because I see OD people all the time, especially in my community. What would you advise them on that aspect of it?
So if I understand the question correctly, this has to do with selling products and maintaining inventory. So e-commerce is one of our niches. It's one of the areas in which we focus. We've got some e-commerce clients. We do well at that. We understand that business. You don't necessarily have to have a bricks and mortar location to sell products and or to sell services. And you can sell them to people across the world. It doesn't have to be people in your local community. That being said, bricks and mortar has its place in business still. There are people who go into restaurants. There are people who still go into grocery stores. For an entrepreneur who's looking at building a business and trying to figure out what kind of business should I build, there's a cost associated with a bricks and mortar location, and there's some limitations with respect to that. That doesn't rule it out as a successful business, but I would recommend that they sit down and think about, well, what is the cost of the bricks and mortar model going to be, in terms of rent and in terms of insurance and in terms of, all these things that we have to consider with a physical location. Is there a way of doing what we think we're going to enjoy doing with e-commerce, instead of having a bricks and mortar location? Or is a hybrid model the best for us, where we have a bit of both? And I've got clients who have a hybrid model. I've got clients who do manufacturing, and then they have so they've got a physical location for manufacturing, but then they do e-commerce to distribute their product across Canada. So there's all kinds of different models there, and I wouldn't rule out any of them. See, so much of it, Hanny, I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but tell me what you think. So much of it it's not even a matter of what specifically you're doing in terms of a business model. It's more a matter of how much passion do you want to put into it? Because if you're passionate about something, you can flip things on their head. Like you can take something that nobody else is doing and make it successful. I mean, Alex Hormozi is kind of a unique guy, right?
Yeah.
And he did things. His story was different, but for him, people weren't doing it his way. He sort of taught them a different way. But everybody who goes into business has that potential to just change things, and it doesn't have to be a change that's as profound as Alex Hormozi's, where everybody on the internet knows who you are. But in your local community, you can come up with a restaurant that, is very successful, or a local grocery store that's very successful, or whatever. I mean, I've seen so many things that I wouldn't have expected to work. So now when I approach business, more than anything, I'm trying to understand, what's the vision of the entrepreneur? What are they thinking? What's their passion? What's the value they deliver? And sometimes it's surprising when you open yourself up like that. It's surprising. I found it surprising for me what I learn, and it's really interesting how people can be successful in ways I never would have imagined. But that's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what's your take on?
Yeah, you actually asked me that question when we first did our first episode, and I think it's a great reminder that, because if there's no vision, if there's no, like, what's the end goal? Like, all the successful books, they talk about the end goal, right? It's like, now you're here, but what are you going to be doing in the next 5 years, essentially? That's kind of where it is. And I think it goes back to focus. I think a lot of times, actually, one other podcast, one of the speakers was talking about how in his 20s, he lost a lot of money. He lost millions of dollars because he was trying to get into the restaurant business. From restaurant, he went into the music industry, from music industry to another business. So I think a lot of it has to do that, especially when you're young. Like for me, I'm 26.
Yeah.
So focus part is so vital. Like it's I probably say it's number one.
Yeah.
Because, so I'm a big believer in faith. I think without faith, I wouldn't be here, because I actually started diving more deep into faith this year. So January, I started looking at the Bible. I looked at the principles, and I realized, like, wow, these are principles that I should have been studying a long time ago, before I even got into business. But the thing is, you focus so much on the profit, the loss, that you forget you know what I mean, the man that's actually gotten you here. Because for me, I was actually an athlete. So I was a basketball player. And then for some reason, I realized, you know, I can actually do entrepreneurship, but I had to tell myself, I want to get into this. So you start somewhere, then you build a skill set, but then you have to have discipline to kind of maintain it. So I'll probably say it's like you have to understand what is the end goal, and then always have something that you're passionate about. For me, it was always about seeing me like meeting customers. I never did that before. I was always isolated. I ate by myself. Like my father was doing that a lot too.
Yeah.
So I had to break a lot of those limiting beliefs. So entrepreneurship was like a new thing for me. So it kind of taught me a lot about myself and the rewiring of the brain, I'd probably say. And then as I started to get more into studying successful people, what have they done? The biggest one is just faith. They're very faith driven, because your business can only go as far as like, you know, as you, right? If you're not taking care of yourself and, you know, making sure that your family is good and the people that are around you, it's going to be very tough for you to go succeed. So that vision piece is so important. And always just focus. I'll probably say, like, you know, Dan Martell talks about focus stands for focus on one course until successful, right? Instead of focusing on multiple courses, you got to focus on one. So that's one of the biggest challenges I probably say for me in that aspect. And then looking at the vision, the next 5 years, because most people are not looking at 2026, but they know that it's here, it's coming. You know what I mean? So Ryan, but tell me, I really like the family aspect to what you're doing as well too. I actually met your wife last time you guys came to the dinner. How has that transition been, like being an entrepreneur, also having your kid come out here to be a podcast? How has that journey been like for you? What keeps you sort of going on this path?
So I love business. I love working with people, and my family is important to me. I recognize that, starting a small business, I'm going to have to build a team, and I've got a full-time worker who works with me. I've got some subcontractors and some part-time people, and some of the people who are part-time are my family members, and they do a good job, and it's fun. And it's kind of like, you know what? Here's the thing. To some people, business is work. And to me, business isn't really work. It's just kind of a way of life. It's fun. It's like you were an athlete, Hanny. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were playing like basketball,
Yes, correct. Yeah.
did you like check your watch and go, oh, how many, is that an hour yet? Is it break time? No, you don't do that. You get into that sense of flow, and it's fun, eh? And you have a team, right? You play with your team, and there may be some friends on the team. There may be family members on the team. For me, my family, the ones that work with me, they don't work full time, and they're not as into it as I am. But I guess they work full time at some times of the year. But we have fun, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I really do. One of my clients was saying the other day that a lot of the problems in business aren't like what problems, they're who problems. And I thought that was pretty profound. And when you think about it, if you find the right person, the right salesperson, the right marketer, the right operator, the person with the right attitude, the right entrepreneur, they can move mountains. And it's true. A lot of problems go away when you have the right person in the position. But then the same client was talking about how energy is one of the main things we should be thinking about when we talk about people. What's their energy? What kind of energy do they bring to the table? If I've got a lot of energy, that's a good thing. I can do things with it. I can make things happen. I can make my clients' lives better. And if I'm enjoying what I do, I'm going to have even more energy. And if my family is working with me, or some people in my family are working with me, and we're having fun, that's great. And if we're not having fun, they don't have to do it. It's an option, right? So when I first started this 6.5 years ago, I have two sons, and they're both a little bit younger. And I said, you know what? It's kind of my dream to build a family business. Not all family members, but a business where my family my kids, my boys could be involved. When I was in the corporate world, I made a lot of money. I was doing a lot of interesting things, but I knew my kids could not follow in my footsteps. I couldn't teach them to do what I was doing and have it be a viable career path for them. For a lot of reasons. I won't get into every reason, but it just wasn't a viable option for them, especially if they're going to live in Winnipeg. And so I thought, what could I do where I could give them an option? So it's my dream that they get involved, and there's lots of family businesses out there. If you look hard enough to find great examples where they make it work and it's a great thing. That's my dream. It's not necessarily their dream, but it's an option for them. And so I feel good about that. I can go to sleep at night and be okay with that. You know what I mean? And as long as I'm servicing my clients well, then there's no issue whatsoever. And all the benefits are there.
No, I 100% agree with you. Another guy that I listen to, Myron Golden, he talks about you know, as you start to have a family, you start to have people around you, it's not so of like giving them jobs or giving them money, but actually getting them to come work with you. And, you know what I mean? That kind of builds, I feel like, a deeper sense of relationship. You feel like now your why is much more greater. It kind of gives you a purpose to do what you do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm guessing you just went all in and decided to, you know what, let me get my family on board as well too. So I really like that.
Yeah, you got it. It's that sense of purpose. Like I can work harder. I can do more. It doesn't even feel like work, and it's because I feel like I'm doing the right thing. So yeah, that's pretty much a good way of summing it up.
Yeah. So Ryan, tell me, as a Mastery as CFO, what does the future look like for you now? The next, let's say, 5 years as you kind of progress.
Well, we're scaling our business, so we're looking for new clients. My team is getting larger. Our processes and our systems are in place. We are very effective at what we do. We're very good at it. I like the way that's it's sitting right now. We're planning on incorporating more and more technology like artificial intelligence. But I want to grow my business, and I want to get to the point where at some time in the next few years, I'm not the one who's doing all of the day-to-day work in the business. I want to get to the point where I've got somebody who's running the business, looking after it like I am right now, some fractional CFOs who are following the effective system, making our clients' lives better. And my dream, when I first began this business, my ultimate dream was to get to the point where I'm actually buying into some of our clients' businesses, maybe, or some other businesses, buying businesses, fixing them up, and then either holding them and taking dividends or selling them. So it's a little bit like house flipping, right? You find a house, it's got good bones, but there's problems with it. So you buy it, you fix it up, and then you sell it for a whole lot more money, and you make a huge profit. By virtue of being able to look at a company's financial statements and understand a whole lot of what's going on there, I can see what's going right and where there's opportunities for improvement. And when I look at a set of financials for a small or mid-sized business that's looking to bring on an equity partner, looking for somebody to buy in, or looking for somebody to succeed them, to take over the business, I can decide if I want to buy into that business, how much I want to invest, and I can pretty quickly figure out how to turn it around, make it a stronger, better company that's worth a whole bunch more money. And then I would have the choice of selling it or holding it and taking profits. So Alex Hormozy does a little bit of that.
Yes, yeah.
And anybody who's considered flipping a house can understand the concept. I love that because I love business so much. And I love the idea of being able to get a team with me where I could say, okay, now your job is going to go sit in this business and you're going to be the COO working with the CEO. We're going to turn this thing around. He's going to win or she's going to win. You're going to win and I'm going to win. And you know what? The more I can do that, like the more I can spread my influence and the better an impact I can make, the better I feel. That's exciting. Like I'm not thinking about retirement or anything like that. So the next 5 years, I'm not in a rush. I want to enjoy the process, but I'm excited about it. And then the next 5 years after that, I'm excited about, and so on and so on and so on. Warren Buffett. So I think I may have mentioned this to you before, Hanny. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but you've mentioned him a couple of times. He's 94 years old, and he announced his retirement from Berkshire Hathaway, the company that he's the CEO of, and it's going to happen when he's 95. So he's going to retire at 95 years old from the CEO position. The chief executive officer position. That's the biggest job you can have. He's still going to be on the board of directors. I'm like thinking to myself, this is amazing. I want to be like that guy. I don't want to retire till I'm 95. I want to break that record if I can. And that kind of stuff, I get a kick out of it. Like, you know what? Yeah, I find this stuff just like a sport. I'm like a kid playing football, or that's my sport,
Warren Buffett is obsessed. Warren Buffett is obsessed with the game of the stock market. And I think you're right. It goes back to what he was doing as a kid. And he's just been playing the game and the net worth to the compound effect, how he's been able to go from, people think that he's accumulated a lot of his wealth in when he in his 30s, 40s, but it's not. It's every like 20, 30 years. If you look at his worth, how it's just kind of compounding in his 40s. I think he was making 20 in his 50s and then eventually to $1 billion. I'm like, wow. So that kind of shows you like there's no such thing as get rich quick. You're not, that's first thing. So it's understanding people who have done it. That's why I always talk about Warren, because studying the principles, the fundamentals of looking at someone who actually built a multi-billion-dollar business. And, so that's kind of mentorship is very important in that aspect. Where most entrepreneurs look up to an influencer who's just getting started 4 or 3 years ago, but they forget the principles. Like you have to study people like Charlie Munger too. I'm a big fan of as well too. Yeah, that's kind of the classics. But before we wrap it up, Ryan, one of the biggest things that I always hear is I was actually having a conversation with a guy the other day is like, uh, most small businesses, the 1 year, the 2 year, and the 3 year, and then they say they disappear or something like that, or they're no longer in business. What do you think the constraint is there? Like, because most people are not looking at the long term, they're not looking at the future aspect to it. But yeah, you do look at time. Is like I say, your greatest asset is not money; it's actually time. So as time kind of increases, are you improving? Are you getting better? What does that year 3 number look like, and how can someone go to that year 5 and maybe 10, looking at their bottom line?
Well, lots of variances there. I've seen lots of things. I mean, if you, first of all, if you have the heart for it, if you want to keep going, if you just don't quit, then it doesn't stop. Unless you're not paying your taxes, the government's not going to go and take your business away from you. So you can exist. You might not be that profitable, but you can exist just by not quitting. And you can work a business part-time if you want, even if you have to go get a job. If you're determined to work a business, nobody fires you except you, so you would fire yourself. But if you want to make a living and you want the business to be the vehicle by which you do that, if you're in your 3rd year and you haven't developed what you need to develop, you have all kinds of options. You can look at it yourself. You might bring in a third party. You might bring in somebody like me, and we can look at what you're doing right, what's going well, but also where there's opportunities for improvement. And you can chart a course from where you are to where you want to be. So that's something I always do, whether it be a company that's struggling or a company that's actually thriving, but they want to continue to thrive. I'll look at those very things. What are you doing right? What are the opportunities for improvement? We look at the financials. We look at the baselines, the trends. I bring to the table perspective from other clients with whom I do business and from other areas of business that I've had experience in. And we start to chart the course. The question I'll ask the entrepreneurs: what do you want? How much profit do you need? When do you want it by? What kind of lifestyle do you want? And we'll build the financial statements. Like I was saying in the beginning, we'll build out, this is what your financial statements are going to have to look like in order for you to have the profit you need to live and the lifestyle you want. And so now let's chart the course. We'll sort of map it out. How are we going to, or reverse engineer it? How are we going to get there? What things have to happen and by what time in order to get there? And sometimes most of the time, that conversation has a profound impact, because whatever it was they were doing, they start to look at a different way to make things happen. If something's not working, you have to look at other ways to make it work. And having that being able to look through that financial lens is another way of identifying hidden levers, opportunities that you may have missed. Again, every successful large company, every successful company of any size, really, if they're successful, they've got 3 pillars that are working relatively well: sales and marketing, finance and accounting, operations and production. If you're not succeeding, there's a weakness in one of those 3 pillars, for sure. And oftentimes the finance and accounting leg is weak, because most small and medium-sized companies don't have a CFO. Every large company has a CFO. It's a fundamental position in a company. They look after the financial success of the business. Small and medium-sized companies just don't have them. And their accountant doesn't do what the CFO does. Their bookkeeper does not do what a CFO does. What's weird for me, like this gets back to advertising, most small and medium-sized businesses don't know what they're missing. And this stuff is a little bit hard to communicate to, like, it's, I'm using terms that not everybody's heard, and I'm talking about math, not everybody's interested in that, but I can simplify it. And people need to, like, business people need to understand how important this is. It's one of the 3 fundamental legs on your 3-legged stool. And so that's where I can help. Yes, there may be weaknesses, but that's the best I can do. That's the path I've chosen. That's my lane. And if somebody wants me to help in that lane, I can do that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Ryan. You got some great words of advice, man. I really like that you're a type of person. You're a very human being. You make the effort to show up. I've built a relationship with you now, and the advice is not, I feel like you're not just transactional, you're more looking to build a relationship with clients and really taking them from step 0 and working with them that way. So I can kind of see that you genuinely want to help the entrepreneur, because it's, like you said earlier, it's tough. It's very hard. Like, even me, like, every day you have to wake up and, I like to say rent is due. Every day rent is due, because no one is going to come and tell you to wake up, hey, tomorrow you got to do this. You got to go follow up with this customer. You got to be willing to make that initial step. And because at the end of the day, it's all subconscious. Like if you can see it there, then most of the time it's like, you know what you need to do, but are you actually doing it, right? And so that's one of the biggest challenges I feel like with small businesses is like, and getting over that hump essentially, and investing into yourself, and eventually once you start growing, hiring someone like yourself. 100% agree with that. If I had to go back now, I would have hired an accountant much faster. I would have hired someone to do my corporation, my lawyer, all that stuff. Because I'm like, I could just search it up on YouTube. I figure it out. But no, you actually don't, because you make so much mistakes, and then you realize the other mistake too is time. You can't get time back. You've already spent so much time trying to fill out the process, hiring. So I think that's the biggest one. It's not really now. I think it's more about how do you spend money to buy back your time instead of the other way. People just they spend a lot of their time and they realize, oh, now you spend, instead of thinking about like, you spent 5 hours, you just lost $10,000. That's kind of how I think about it now. So I read a lot of these books and stuff like that. So Ryan, thank you so much, man. Where people can find you, Ryan?
So our website is www.masterycfo.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And I'm easy to reach. You can call me. You can send me an email. I may not be able to get back to you that very moment, but I will get back to you. And one thing I say to anybody who's interested in discussing what we might be able to do for them, let me know. If you want to have a discussion, we'll have a meeting. It can be in person or it can be over Zoom. If you're anywhere in Canada, I service businesses in Canada. Happy to talk about your business, your situation, and if we can help. And if not, that's okay. And if we can, we'll talk about what the next steps might be.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Ryan. Like I said, he's a very open person. You can always reach out to him. So this is the Ryan Podcast. I'm your host. This is going to be a wrap. Stay tuned for the next episode.